Hi, welcome to the session. Today we're going to look at In Motion from the Social Network by Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross, and how do we create that in Logic Pro X. In Motion is an interesting piece because it continually repeats itself, yet moves forward and gives that feeling of motion towards the song. So let's have a look. So this is our session for the Social Network In Motion by Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross, and it's at 124 BPM, and here's how it sounds. So that's the end of the track, and here's how I built this bit by bit. You can see that the pattern is sort of like this staircase kind of pattern, which means there are lots and lots of repeating patterns, which is essentially the kind of electronic music style that Trent Reznor is pretty much known for. And it's just layering more and more things, and also sort of getting the sounds to evolve as time goes by. So let's start with the basics. Now, with the bass, which is this line here, I'm just going to play it like that. So it's this repeating pattern, and so what I used was an ESM, which has this nice little fat basses that you can play with. There's a lot of nice little basses, not many from the sort of presets, but you can muck around with it and get what you want as well. But I picked a dub bass preset, and I mucked around a little bit with it, and I got this kind of like bass, funky bass sound. And then I paired it with another bass, because what you can see is that these two are playing identical notes, right? And what happens is that I pan them a bit to the, this one a bit to the right, a bit to the left, and I get a wide sort of like singular bass sound that seems very wide and sort of like bigger and more complex. And as you already know, I like to stack basses and synths and other instruments together to sort of get a richer tone. Now, when you double these things, you want to have different kind of tones but within the same family. So I opened up an Alchemy patch, I went on the synths analog, and I found this deep one which I pushed to be a little bit brighter and slightly towards muffled. And it sounds like this. Now, there is a mod that's happening, and I got it under modulation delay, and just because I wanted a bit of that kind of chorusy kind of sound. But let's take it out and hear how it sounds. It's a bit deeper than the dub bass we have here, but it's kind of within the same family. And I wanted to give it that metallic sort of chorusy type of sound, and here's how it sounds. So you get a bit of that metallic kind of sound. Okay, now let's play both the basses together and hear how they sound together as a singular unit. So it's just richer, you know, and it still doesn't feel like two different instruments playing at the same time. It feels like one singular instrument that's wider and richer with more sort of like a richness in tone. So I really like doing that. And then I used, for the drums, the kick drums. It's a really straightforward kick drum. Under drums and percussions, electronic drum kits, EXS 909. And it's just playing the kick like that on C1. And it's just looping all the way through. If you don't know how to make these loops, every time you bring your mouse pointer to the top right, you see this little loop thing. You can drag it to the right or you can drag it to the left. And that's how you create more loops. Now that's really straightforward. So it just goes like this. And it's pretty much the kind of sound that they use on this track as well. So I keep it to the 909 kick. Now you have this little interesting rhythmic thing going, which sounds like this. And this is my approximation of what it sounds like. I just did it by ear. So I'm pretty sure it's not like 100% accurate, but it sounds pretty close. And the sound that I got was also from one of the stock standard old Logic synths. And it has an ES2. And it sounds a bit like a sort of triangle wave. So I started with a tutorial synth called Sync Start, and I sort of mucked around from there. And yeah, it's pretty straightforward, you know, quantized to 1/16 notes and looped as well right till the end. Pretty much very straightforward for this. Now after that, so as things start coming in, you can see sort of the layers building up. The hat starts coming in, and that's actually from the same drum track. I just cloned it, and it's the hat. Oops. Yeah. And you see this hat playing here, and it just goes paired with the kick. Really straightforward kind of drum. And that's it for the sort of snare / hat type thing. Now, we have this sort of chord going on. It's actually more complex than this in the original song, but I sort of simplified it to something that's easier to create, and it still has the same vibe about it. I picked an Alchemy patch. Under leads, bright festival soul lead, and I brought it to sort of like resonant pluck percussive kind of sound. And I use an ARP, a MIDI ARP. So it's just live going upwards on a 1/16. And that's why it's played staggered like that, so you get that pattern. And I wanted it to filter through. So I put an auto filter in, and I picked the always rising filter at the rate of 1 bar. And you can muck around with the cutoffs and resonance and get different kinds of sounds. And I also EQ'd out the low end, just the low end, because I didn't want any low end in the filtering. And it sounds like the bit in the song, so it just goes like that. Every 1 bar, it just filters upwards. And that's it. So it goes together, it sounds like this. And it's the same chords throughout. And then I heard something in the track that I thought was pretty interesting, and that the basses started becoming like wider and having this little top end at this section here. So these things here are actually sort of add-ons to the bass over here. So have a listen to what these two sound like, just in solo. And it's just this singular notes, right, that are going around, and they're actually giving the top end rhythm. So if you hear this too, right, before and after, so it feels like the top end of this has just started coming in. And same for this, have a listen. So it's got that top end, actually the left, the left one's meant to be paired with the left, so and the right. So the left one's meant to be paired with this one. Yeah, so it sounds like. And the right one is paired with this one. So it just gives that high end sort of like buzz. But it opens up the bass. So what I did was I took an ESM, went to subsonic bass, and I EQ'd the hell out of it. I took out all the low end, took out a bit of high end, just left somewhere around the 5K region to give that little buzz. And pretty much the same for this as well. Under ESM, I picked an overdrive bass this time, and I EQ'd the hell out of it, left a little bit, took out more top end on this one, and you get that little buzz. And I panned them even wider than these two, so it sort of like gives it that bigness when the bass comes in. Here's how it sounds. And you notice this doesn't give any sort of like tone or bass information. That's why it just sits on the same note, and that's kind of fine for this. So I found that pretty cool. And now onto the lead. Okay, the lead is an Alchemy track. And I just go to browser, under ambient, I found this brassy glass bells, and I moved it to plastic clucks. And I can't remember what I tweaked around here, but it wasn't very much at all. Normally I just tweak the stuff that's in here where you can find in the browser already. So, oh yeah, I remember what I tweaked now. I tweaked the pitch, that's why I had to go to advanced. And what happens is, just listen to this. So the interesting thing, what I found in the track itself, is this track, this lead sound here feels a little bit detuned. So it didn't really fit the perfect sort of key into the song. So I pulled the tuning down by 20 cents. You can push it up, push it a little bit, and just muck around with it a little bit to get the feel that you want. I pulled it down 20 cents. And you can find that it sort of like gives that slightly dissonant feeling towards the song. Already the notes are chosen very well, but that sort of like detuning makes it even more dissonant. So it's got a bit of that strangeness about it. And underneath that, on the second time round, there's sort of like this pad-like thing. And what I picked was an Alchemy track as well. And it sounded like voices, so I picked this girls choir ooh ooh, which I just searched at ooh ooh under here. And I moved it towards softer. And I took out a lot of the high end, all the wind, all the sort of the air, sorry, not the wind, the air from sort of the oohs, and just bumped it up a little bit here. And it sort of becomes this underlying thing. Let's have a listen. The thing about using sort of like soft synths and samples is you got to be careful with your velocities, because velocities do make a difference to the tonal range of the synth and the sort of sample as well. So pick your velocities, right? Sometimes it's better to have a low velocity and sort of push up the volume on your track, or high velocity and pulling down the volume to get different kind of sort of textures at different volumes. So that's it. And you can see there's an amp here. And what happens is under automation, I actually automate an amp in when this point, because it becomes distorted. So you can see the amp turning on. And I picked that Anvil Shred Crunch because I wanted quite a bit of distortion on this. You could actually create a new track, sort of duplicate the track and then put the amp on that and then bring all these there, and that works too. But I did it the automation way, and here's how it sounds. You gotta be a little bit careful with this because it can actually blow out. It already sounds like it's going to blow out, and that's kind of the right place where this is supposed to happen anyway, which I think is pretty cool. So if you want to do your insert bypass, remember you can go to main, insert 3 bypass, whichever order your insert is. This is insert 3 here. So main, insert 3 bypass, and then you just create your bypass here. And that's it. And then at the end, it's all bypasses again, back to the regular vocals. Now also, if you see, there are volume automations all over the place. This one sort of goes down when the distortion comes in and slowly goes up. A lot of things sort of creep up a little bit right at the end, and we'll talk about ones at the bottom later. All right, so this one is a really straightforward one. It's actually just the hats. So I have this studio toolkit happening, but I paired it with an ARP and a really basic 1/16 ARP going upwards, and it's playing this. And it gives a bit of that mechanical kind of sound to something that's pretty organic, and it kind of works with this. Gives it a bit of variation to the sound. I mean, you could use just one, but it sounds very monotonous, and sometimes that works, but I like a bit of variation in this. And then now, so we go to the pads, the crazy stuff, and it's called Crazy Feedback Machine. So under Soundscape's Distorted, I went to this Crazy Feedback Machine, and basically it's playing these kind of notes here. Where is it? Oh, there we go. Yeah, so it's sort of the pattern. So it's playing the same notes as the sort of ooh pad there, right? You see that they're the same name because I just dragged them down and stretched them out. Yeah, it's just easier to do that. I just copied this over as well. And that is that for the feedback kind of sound. So it gets bigger and bigger. And then we have this cloud formations, and this is really like the noisescape that's going on. So you can see under Soundscape's Chaotic, I picked cloud formations and I pushed it to ghosting a little bit. And you can always play around with the stuff that's here, you know. Just move them around to the minimums and maximums and hear the effect of what it does. I'm a big fan of saying that, okay, let's turn this knob all the way left or right and see what it does. Because if you tweak it just a little bit, you might not know exactly what it does. So it's great to sort of push everything to the edge and see what it really does and sounds like. So I'm just playing this sort of like random notes. I sort of smooshed my fingers together when I felt like it for these, and then I sort of later clean them up a little bit so it sounds like, yeah, you know, and as it goes along you add more notes and they sort of come in and out. So more notes get smooshed together right near the end. It gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And you notice with my automation as well, right at the end, I cut them off. The ones with the tail, I cut them off so that it goes back right to the quiet bit, which is just this repeated, still looped. And of course, there's this thing here. And I think in the original song, they might use just one synth, then muck around with sort of like knobs and stuff. But I just found it easier to just blend different sounds together. So I use a retro synth and sounded like a triangle. So I put a tri-pulse lead and I put an arp going upwards at 132 dotted, right? And I made the notes length shorter. And yeah, so that's it for the options. Oh, sorry, it's upwards. Yep. And it just plays this. There's 3 notes. It sort of disappears because the automation. And this one as well plays also 3 notes, but a different texture. So still the same retro synth. I mucked around with the shape. I moved it from here, right over here, so it's not so symmetrical, and it sounds different. It sounds like this. Here we go. Sorry. So essentially it's playing the same thing, but it's sort of like evolving from the sort of square wave sound to the sort of asymmetrical square wave, and here's how it sounds. So you see, like, it sounds like one synth sort of evolving, but I found it just easier to do this sort of automation around 2 synths of different, so you can sort of mix and match the parts that you want. More flexibility that way. And this one is also, I believe, a retro synth. Tri-pulse lead as well, over at the asymmetrical square wave. And it's just playing these octaves. 4 octaves, and under the arp going upwards at 132 dotted. So here's how it sounds. So it's this like controlled chaos right at the end with this synth, and here's how it sounds. And that's how it sounds together with everything. So you get this chaos, and then it sort of drops to 0. And it goes back to the same pattern here, which is just a repeat of the earlier patterns here. And that's about it. I hope you learned something useful today. I'm not a particular synth head, so I use a lot of pre-programmed patches and then evolve from there. So you need to know the way you approach your creation of sounds, whether it's from scratch or whether it's from a predetermined sound and you create something from that. Either way, you need to know your synths really well, or you need to know your library really well, and you can create something from there. If you like the tutorial, you can download it at the link below, and please subscribe for more. See ya.